Aloha, and welcome to the Sylvan Bell Business Growth and Exit Strategy Podcast, your guide to building companies that command maximum multiples. I'm Sylvan Bell, author of 5 books on business strategy and sales, creator of the Sell Framework, Scale Framework, and Driver Test. I work with owners of $10 million to $250 million companies, whether you're scaling for growth or positioning for a profitable exit. Each episode breaks down one framework, strategy, or concept you can apply this week to grow revenue systematically, scale operations, and maximize enterprise value. Let's get started. Welcome to episode number 40. We are on the threats framework, crisis protection for your business. We are working within the exit ratio 360, and threat stands for turnovers, hacks, reputation, economic disruption, actions, trouble, and surprises. And if you didn't know, entrepreneur is French for problems. I'm just kidding. But when you're an entrepreneur, sometimes it just seems like the problems never end, and it's your role and responsibility to fix them. And I'm going to give you an example. An owner scored 290 on their exit ratio 360. They had 2 buyers lined up for the deal and lost everything in 60 days because a crisis hit they were not prepared for. There was no system in place. And that's when the werewolves, the vampires, and the pirates come out. They're going to come out to try to take advantage of you. So you might as well be prepared for your threats. One of the things that's not talked about is crisis protection isn't part of your readiness score. It's the shield that protects you and your readiness score. And the threats framework exists as a standalone 7-category system with 4 response protocols, because the fastest way to destroy 2 years of preparation is to have no plan for the moment something goes awry and you have a problem. There's a buyer's lens, and they expect things to go wrong. And when they're evaluating a deal, they're taking a look at it and they're saying, what's going to happen when there's a crisis? Because as an ownership group, we may live halfway across the United States, or we may even be in a different country. So walk us through your contingency plan with your key people and your client concentration and your response plans and your financial disruption protocol. If the answer is like, I've never heard of that, or I'll figure it out, you may end up with dings and dents, or even worse. It may end the conversation and due diligence is over. Like, sometimes what happens is due diligence ends, but nobody has the moral courage to tell you. So it drags on for a little bit extra, and then just the deal fizzles out. You don't want that. You want to have a solid conversation, a seller's thesis, a Titan thesis ready to go, so that you don't get penalized for having no system to respond to risks, problems, and issues. This distinction is everything. Threats inside of the exit ratio 3 system is different than every other component because it doesn't score your readiness. It protects your readiness by looking at the threats. Like, how prepared are you? How protected are you? And when something tries to take away that preparation, what are you going to do? It's a diagnostic tool that helps you not be up at night worrying if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. What are we going to do tomorrow? You already know what the likely crises are and what you're going to do to respond. Key people leaving, major client disruption, cash flow issues, regulatory changes, market downturn, legal issues. You've already got a response protocol in place. Not what like, hey, maybe I'm going to cross my fingers. I'm crossing my fingers and this is what I might do. It's documented. It's assigned. It's a possible protocol, because not every plan can be lined out exactly the right way that it should be. You know, you're running a business that's worth multi-millions of dollars with no insurance against what's going to happen, what's likely to happen to destroy the value overnight, except to work within the threats framework and say, hey, listen, at least we've got a plan. At least we've got a preparation. I want to warn you of it's not going to happen to us syndrome. I hear this sometimes from business owners, from executives, like, hey, Scott, it'll never happen to us. And then a couple months later, like, get the phone call, the text message, funny thing, Scott, ha, 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 uncomfortable laugh. You know that black swan event that we talked about that we said would never happen, our key employee leaving, they left us. And then they took their team with them. And they went to the major competitor down the street, right? Your largest client announcing, hey, they're going to a competitor, that they're shifting, or they're going to open up their own product line. Like, the beautiful thing about the exit 360, the exit ratio 360, and having the threats framework is you've already thought about the most common issues that could happen inside of your business, and you've planned for them. You've ran red team exercises without you being in the room to determine, hey, what is going to happen if these 7, 8, 9, 10 major issues occur? And then when you're sitting down in due diligence and the buyer asks you a question and you can confidently answer like, oh, we've got a plan for that. Oh, you do? Yeah, it's already in my Titan thesis. We've already prepared for it. We've already had that conversation. I can't tell you how many times that I've been in a due diligence call and the buyers are like, hey, we've never really thought about that or having that ready in a plan or having this conversation up front. We're probably going to implement that upon purchase. Right? And this is one of the most important reasons to have legal representation and have an NDA. I'm not a doctor, attorney, marriage counselor, or therapist, but you do want to make sure that your intellectual property is protected. So you may say, Scott, how do buyers detect this? Well, they're not waiting for a crisis, and they're not waiting to point the crisis time out. What they're going to do is they're going to ask. They're going to meet with you. They're going to ask questions. They're going to meet with your management team. They're going to ask questions. And when you can answer them confidently and point to a plan and say it's already in the binder, it's already in the file, let's see, so to speak, and it's there's no vague answer here. We've practiced this. We've done fire drills or red team exercises. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. What that's going to signal to a buyer is like, man, this company's ready to go. You're prepared for key people leaving. You're prepared for key clients leaving. You're prepared for natural events. Doesn't mean that everything's going to work perfect. No, because that would be crazy and I would be making stuff up if I told you that was true. But what does happen is the speed of decision making, the speed of taking action, the speed of here's what we're going to do in a natural disaster. Here's what we're going to do in case of cash crunch. Here's what we're going to do if a major employee leaves or a major client leaves, right? And then you have the ability to build out your playbook. You have your ability to make your changes now when it's comfortable instead of when it's uncomfortable. You don't want a valuation penalty, right? If you're under LOI and an unprotected crisis happens, what you don't want is a major ding or dent or worse. So you may have scored 290 on the exit ratio out of 360, and you could have had some competing bids. And, things go sideways, things go crazy. And one of them walks within a week. And then one of them changes their terms. You want this preparation in place. I will share this with you. When you're in the middle of a huge deal, you're going to notice the things that pull on your attention more than normal. I'm going to give you some personal notes from my life. Okay. The biggest deals I've ever been a part of have illuminated to me the most amount of distractions I've had in my life. Right. I'm in the middle of a huge deal and it's like problem after problem after problem. And a friend pointed out, hey, Scott, this is your normal life. But what you're seeing is all the distractions that you have in your life that you normally don't see because you're so focused on this deal. Right. And so what happens is that level of stress that happens within the deal multiplies. And what you don't want is to have a lot of stress when you're doing the deal. There's going to be some issues. There's going to be some problems. There's going to be some questions, but you want it to be as easy as possible. And message from your sponsor, Scott Sylvan Bell. That's me. If you're getting value from this episode, here's how to go deeper. First, subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Party, at scottsylvanbell.com. That's where I share the strategies, frameworks, and case studies I don't release anywhere else. You'll get one actionable insight every week you can implement inside your business immediately. Second, while you're on the site, download the complete Cell Framework, Scale Framework, and Drivers Test, all free with scoring guides, worksheets, and step-by-step implementation checklist. These are the same frameworks I use with $10 million to $250 million companies to build systematic revenue, scale operations, and maximize enterprise value. Go to scottsylvanbell.com right now, subscribe to the newsletter, grab the frameworks, and let's keep building companies that command maximum multiples. Let's get going. There's a secondary consequence you need to know about. Like when the crisis hits, that's a big enough problem. But the second hit is what it reveals about the business. There's major crisis and you lose a client. Okay, what does that reveal about the business? There's major crisis and you lose a key employee. What does that reveal about the business? What happens is the cover gets ripped off of your design and the dings and dents become magnified and your entire exit ratio 360 gets devalued. What you don't want to have is somebody have all this information in their head and then they walk away and there's no way to capture that information. I have seen companies held ransom because an employee found out that the company was up for sale and they go, hey, I'm Black Box Bob or Black Box Betty, and the only way you're going to get this information out of me is if you pay me. And you're in an uncomfortable position. Yep. There's some legal issues here, but what are you going to do? Right? This is why you really got to prepare on a 5, 4, 3, 2 year basis. And as far out as you can, deal with Black Box Bob, Black Box Betty, or Protected Pete or Protected Penelope. The people who are going to cause you problems in a deal. The people who are going to hold you back. These people are a threat inside of your business. If you listen to any of my episodes of the Business Growth and Exit Strategy podcast, or you watch any of my videos on the Consulting Secret channels, I talk about Black Box Bob, Black Box Betty, Protected Pete, Protected Penelope all the time. Because the sooner that you can spot these people that are inside of your business that are holding back and holding on to key information, the sooner that you can make some moves and have them give you the information and put them on a score plan, pay for them to leave or give you the information or ask them to leave, the better off you're going to be. If they're a log jam, if they're a bottleneck in your business, you're better off not having them, right? Consult with an attorney. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a marriage counselor. I'm not a therapist, right? But I am going to let you know that you have somebody that may hold back your deal just because they don't want to give you information. If you don't know this, there's usually an account executive, aka a salesperson, that you're going to talk to about your deal. And they're your advocate. They're the person who's saying we should do this deal. And if a crisis hits, they got to worry about looking bad. They got to worry about, oh my goodness, I vouched for this company and I really wanted it. And I said it was an A+ company, or I said it was an A company, and now all of a sudden it's a C company. You're gonna have a whole bunch of ripple effects inside of the organization. The deal committee is going to start asking harder questions. The legal team's going to tighten the terms. The finance team's going to revise the model downward. And that deal champion, they're going to worry about their credibility on the next deal. You have to know that there's people that are on the other side rooting for the deal to get done, not just because they want to get paid, but because they want to win. They want to find a winning company for their acquisition. They want to be able to say, I was the one that brought in this A+ company, this platform company. I was the one that was able to make magic happen when nobody else could. And one unprotected crisis can cascade through the entire decision-making process of the buyer and kill a deal that should have been done and should have been closed. So you may say, hey, Scott, what are the fixes? Come on, give it to me. What are the fixes? Fix number 1, the threats framework covers 7 crisis categories: key people, clients, financial, market, operation, legal, and reputation. For each category, build a 4-tier response protocol. Tier 1, let's monitor it. What are the indicators that you're going to have to look weekly or monthly or quarterly? Tier 2, the indicators you watch between that signal the risk, that alert you. Tier 3, what's your response? What happens within 24 to 72 hours? And Tier 4 is the emergency, the protocol for the extensional level issue that threatens the immediate response of your business. Who does what? Right? This helps with your decision bands. This helps with your ability to say, this is the right person. In this event, here's who you call. And that person knows. I'm going to give you an example. I live in California. We have earthquakes all the time. Right? We probably had an earthquake yesterday and I didn't feel it. Okay. I live in Sacramento. The San Andreas fault line runs south of here. We probably had an earthquake. I didn't know. So in your decision band, you're going to say, Scott's in charge of earthquakes. So if there's an earthquake, I know it's my role and responsibility. I live in Sacramento. We tend to have fires. Okay, so let's say that there's a Becky on the team. And Becky is the person that if there is a fire, that's their response. We have floods in Sacramento. And that may be Jim's job. So Jim is the one that tackles floods. I'm just going through natural disasters. You can go through loss of major client, loss of major employee. And if it is a major employee, you always want to have a backup person that's going to go to. And then you want to validate this information is private and labeled private and stays in-house. Talk to an attorney about what it takes for you to make sure that whatever documentation you put in place stays private inside of your business and stays confidential. There's ways that you do this. I'm not a doctor or an attorney, but you absolutely want to have this conversation. Number 2 is the people. Do they know where the plan is? Do they have any idea of what the steps are that are going to be in place? Do they know who they are supposed to contact? Who's their counterpart? And if they're out of town, did they assign that idea, that concept or strategy to somebody else? People take vacation. People get sick. People take days off. Somebody has got to be the next person in the succession line to take over. And then the last is documentations. You want to document a playbook. You want to know where that access is. It could be on the server. It could be a document in a binder. It could be a book that you have printed. But each protocol gets a trigger definition, what constitute what tier it's in. And a response sequence. What's the response sequence going to be? A communication template. One of the easiest ones to do is a PR crisis. Somebody says something bad about your company and it's bad. Not a bad review, right? You slip up and do something dumb at dinner. You slip up and do something dumb on vacation. That's going to require some PR. That's going to require somebody to help you have that right conversation. So have you started the conversation? Do you have somebody in mind in case you do something dumb, in case you do something silly? What's documented is transferable. And in this context, it's beyond important because threats are not ever planned for when they happen. They just show up. But like when you can open a book and point out and go, we already know what we're going to do. It allows for your team to be calm. It allows for your team to be confident. It allows for your team to make better decisions. People don't always make good decisions under adversity or under stress. The cool thing about you having documentation like this is you have evidence. You have categories, you have documentation, you have assignments, you have tested response protocols, and you have simulations that you run. You run red team exercises. You get to have this conversation with a buyer. They tell me about your management team. Oh yeah, we just did our monthly red team exercise. We're like, what's that? Well, we assign a random event to have happen. We draw it out of a hat. I leave. They go through the process. They come up with a solution. And then we see what happens and what broke or what was able to be achieved. And when you have the ability to say, hey, look, I got proof that we've thought about the problems that could happen in business. This is when you start going from an A-level deal to an A+ level deal. And you can get the Titan thesis or the maximum multiple. People will pay for proof. But it's got to be good proof. It's got to be documented proof, protocols, assigned owners, measured response time, simulation results. It's not that you're just building value, you prove it. I got a self-test for you in the next 3 months. What's something that might happen? What's a problem that your company may face? And if it happened at 4:00 on a Friday afternoon, what would you tell a buyer if you were in due diligence? If your answer is I figured out over the weekend, it's not a plan. You're going to get dings and dents. You're going to have questions about your company. It's a prayer. It's a hope. And hope is not a plan. You really want to take this serious and say, hey, if we had an issue with employees, if we had a PR crisis, if we had a major client leave, what do we do? And then you fix those gaps as much as you can. You bring in the right people. You bring in the right team. You have the tough conversations. And if you've got Black Box Bob, Black Box Betty, Protected Peter, Protected Penelope inside of your business, you've got to figure out what you're going to do with them. You can pay them for the information. You can pay them to stay home, or you can ask them to leave. There's only, we're going to use first principle thinking. There's only so many things that you can do. What you want to do to close this episode out is you want to build out one threats category per month or per quarter and pick the highest likelihood first. And then start building it on a 4-tier system. Monitor the indicators, alert triggers, 72-ounce response protocol, the emergency escalation plan, and assign an owner. Like there are so many templates online. You can build this as a template so easy. And then document it, test it, run a red team exercise. And then when it's done and you've documented, run through it in slow motion. Okay, here's what we do. Okay, here's how this works. Okay, here's the next step. And then what you're going to do is a couple weeks later is you're going to walk into the office. You're going to pull out a folder and you're going to say, I'm sorry, I'm not available. I'm leaving. I'm turning off my phone. I don't care what's going on in the business. We're running a red team exercise. Here's the situation. Fix it. And then you leave. You want to build the ability to have your team do the right thing at the toughest situation so you can transfer that knowledge in the sale, right? And if you're like, hey, Scott, now is not the right time to do it. Okay, talk to somebody qualified that can help you through this and have these conversations. It may very well be that you need to have somebody on your side to get this done. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for you to work through the threats framework, it's going to be super beneficial to you. Mahalo for listening to the Scott Sylvan Bell Business Growth and Exit Strategy podcast. Here's what's available to you right now. First, subscribe to this podcast so you get every framework we release. Second, visit scottsylvanbell.com to access the Sell Framework, Scale Framework, and Driver Test. All free with complete scoring guides and implementation worksheets. Third, subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Party, where I break down strategies and frameworks you won't find anywhere else with one actionable insight every week. Go to scottsylvanbell.com and enter your email. And if this episode added value, share it with another business owner building a $10 million to $250 million company. Until next time, keep building companies that command maximum multiples Aloha.